Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining. We're going to allow a few more attendees to come in and then we'll get started.
Buenas tardes, hablé intérprete en español. En unos momentos empezaremos con la sesión, después que venga un poco más de integrantes.
Okay, thank you all so much. Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Artia Funderburg. I am the CIP Communications Specialist. Tonight's meeting will be recorded and available for viewing on the Capital Programs Planning and Design webpage. Interpretation will be provided throughout tonight's, interpretation will be provided throughout tonight's presentation. To enable interpretation, please click the globe icon at the bottom of your Zoom window and select your desired language. I'm going to allow the interpreters to introduce themselves.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Yo soy la comunicadora para este evento. Este evento está siendo grabado y va a estar en nuestro sitio web de planificación. En nuestro sitio. Y después, si usted quisiera cambiar al idioma que quisiera escuchar, abajo va a tener un icono, depende de su dispositivo, un globo, y va a marcar la opción en español, que es la opción que es usted la que quisiera escuchar ese idioma. Muchas gracias.
مساء الخير، نشكركم على حضوركم معنا اليوم بهذا الاجتماع. نحب ننوه بأنه هذا الجلسة مزودة باللغات المختلفة، العربية الأمهرية والإسبانيولية. إذا كنتوا عم تشاهدونا من التليفون، رجاء الضغط على إشارة الكرة الأرضية، الضغط على الثلاث نقاط في أسفل الشاشة لاختيار اللغة المناسبة لكم وهي اللغة العربية، بعدين السماع عبر الإنترنت، وبعدين اختيار اللغة لسماع مباشرة هذه المعلومات. إذا كنتوا عم تشاركونا من الكمبيوتر، رجاء إشارة الكرة الأرضية، كمان تستخدموا الترجمة اللغة العربية، بعدين السماع عبر الإنترنت لتستمعوا إلى هذه الجلسة مباشرة. شكرا.
Thank you so much. We'll get started and I'll turn the floor to you, Azuka.
Thank you, Artia. And good evening, everyone, again. Welcome to our 1703 Northburg Swing Space virtual community meeting. My name is Azuka Bartlett, Director of Capital Programs, Planning and Design. I'm going to start off with the agenda. Today we have an overview of the project, and we'll go over the schedule and the budget and high level. We'll show some examples of the renovated space for adaptive reuse project. We'll go over again in high level over the swing space logistics, and then we'll finish off the presentation with next steps and questions. Next slide, please. I'll do a quick introduction of our team members. Erica Gulick, our Executive Director of Facilities. My name is Azuka Bartlett again, Director of Capital Programs, Planning and Design. Sophie Humer, she's our planner. Artia Funderburg, she's our CIP Communications Specialist. And we also have some representatives from our design team. Sean O'Donnell, Principal and K-12 Practice Leader from Perkins Eastman. And Karen Giagonda, Senior Associate from Perkins Eastman. We also have representative from city staff from Planning and Zoning, Dirk Garrett. And that concludes our introductions. Next slide, please. And with that, I'll turn it over to Sophie.
Thank you, Azuka. Just also for everyone, if you want to, their Q&A box is open at the bottom of the chat, and you can put in questions at any time for us to answer at the end. So my name is Sophie Humer, and I'm a planner with the Office of Capital Programs, Planning and Design. I'll be going over the history of the swing space as well as an introduction to 1703 North Beauregard. So in January of 2021, we did feasibility studies for the modernization of George Mason and Cora Kelly, which were resumed after being put on hold during the pandemic. Later in June of 2021, those studies were presented to the community and to the school board, and the school board agreed that George Mason and Cora Kelly should be complete replacements for their modernization. And being that they were complete replacements, swing space was needed, and the school board directed staff that the swing space was preferable to maintain George Mason Park and limit rezoning of the open space at Cora Kelly. Then in fall of 2021, the school board began due diligence on the purchase of 1703 North Beauregard, and the building was incorporated into our FY 23 to 32 CIP budget. In February of 2022, ACPS then closed on the purchase of 1703 North Beauregard. And in the spring and summer of 2022, planning for our swing space began. And then later this fall, the Perkins Eastman team was selected as the architect and engineering consultants. So what is swing space exactly, and where are we looking at 1703 North Beauregard? A swing space is a facility that is temporarily utilized as a school building while a new school is being built. Having this swing space allows for more flexibility in the design of those new schools, and it also eliminates concerns of an active construction on site, which may create disruption to instruction. So the swing space is preferable in that situation. This map just shows 1703 North Beauregard next to Ferdinand T. Day, and also in relation to the George Mason and Cora Kelly school zones. Taking a closer look at 1703 North Beauregard itself, you'll notice it looks very familiar to Ferdinand T. Day, just across the plaza. It's located off of North Beauregard Street, next to some existing apartments, as well as a parking garage. And I will turn it back over to Azuka to take a closer look at the building.
Thank you, Sophie. We wanted to kind of go over quickly on the existing tenants and existing conditions of the building. Here you're seeing some of the interior shots of the first floor of the building as an existing office space. Next slide, please. My apologies, my dog is barking in the background. Currently, we have existing daycare facility, which will remain on the first floor through the use of the swing space of the 1703 North Beauregard building by ACPS. ACPS is also working with remaining tenants on mutually beneficial solutions for them to vacate the building prior to the start of the construction. I'm going to go over the anticipated timeline for the swing space project. As Sophie mentioned, we have brought on our A&E team this fall. We're in very early stages of design, and through the design process, we will determine the permitting process that we'll go through for the project. And that also will determine the start of the construction for the project. We're anticipating to start the construction for the swing space next year. In the fall, and completion of the construction in the fall or winter of 2024. And then from 2024 through 2029, the building will be used as a swing space for the George Mason and Cora Kelly modernization projects. And then starting fall of 2029 through fall of 2031, we'll do the retrofit for the future use of the school building, and we're hoping to have it open to the new school for fall of 2031. Next slide, please. Budget, we have allocated $24.5 million for this project. We do have additional proposed budget in FY24 for $5 million. This is a proposed budget. Again, it hasn't been approved by school board or city council at this time. And then the funding for the permanent school use is included in the FY2033 CIP New Year fiscal year. As we mentioned earlier in our agenda, we wanted to show an example of adaptive reuse project, and luckily ACPS does have an experience with adaptive reuse project right across the street at 1701 North Beauregard building, which is our Ferdinand T. Day Elementary School project. On these photos, you're seeing on the first photo the exterior of the building with an addition of a stairwell, which serves as the main kind of circulation for the school, and then some interior shots of the media center, the lobby of the building, extended learning areas, as well as the playground on the top level of the parking garage. Next slide, please. And we retained Perkins Eastman as our A&E team. They're extremely experienced in school design. They have worked on our early childhood center, which is co-located at the John Adams Elementary School. Also, you're seeing some of the other examples of their work on the slide, and they're also working on our Minnie Howard project at this time, which is currently under construction. Next slide. So some of the design elements that would be important to consider in this project are maximizing space and considering creative solutions to create access to outdoor spaces, playground spaces, considering the kitchen and cafeteria spaces, also circulation and drop-off, and as well as the first floor layout of the building, considering that there will be a dual occupancy with the existing daycare facility. In addition, adhering to our educational specifications where possible and accommodating flexibility for the future uses. High-level swing space logistics at this time. We are anticipating that the transportation will be provided to all the students when the building is being used for swing space. We'll do a close coordination with Ferdinand T. Day as the parking garage is a shared parking garage. And also because of the campus is very close in proximity with each other. We're considering staggered start time and dismissal times, and will be evaluated to reduce congestion, ensure safe and efficient access to the campus for parents and ACPS transportation. And with that, I'll turn it over to Artia.
Thank you. So for next steps in communications for the 1703 project, the design phase is ongoing. We anticipate that in early 2023, we will hold another community meeting. During that meeting, we will continue to garner community feedback and input, and hopefully be able to provide an update on designs. The important thing is that everyone in our community remain informed, and they can do that by signing up for our CIP newsletter, which comes out the first Monday of every month. And then we will keep information updated on the Capital Programs Planning and Design webpage. We will have this presentation available for view and download following tonight's meeting as well. Our contacts are Azuka Bartlett. She's our Director of Capital Programs Planning and Design. Sophie Humer, she is our planner, and myself, Artia Funderburk, the CIP Communications Specialist. At this time, we're going to open it up for questions. You should see an icon at the bottom that says Q&A with 2 text bubbles against each other. Feel free to click there and type in your question. All right. Our first question, how confident are we on the project schedule? Will George Mason have design completed and have a contractor on board to begin construction in 2024?
Okay, I'll take that question, and Erica or Sophie, if you want to jump in anytime, please feel free to. George Mason design is scheduled in our CIP in FY 2024. So we'll start on the design process as soon as the funding becomes available, which will be summer of next year. The design process usually takes about 18 to 24 months, including permitting process. And then during the design process, we bring on the contractor as a pre-construction services. So in 2024, design and permitting will still be ongoing, and the contractor will be on board.
Okay. Have you been in communication with community partners, specifically Campagna? How do you propose parents who utilize this service pick up their children from aftercare when it is across the city during rush hour?
Erica, would you like me to take this question?
Yeah, go ahead. And if I need to.
All right, I think you're having a little bit of a internet issue there. Yes, we do work closely with our community partners, and we work with Campagna, RPCA, and go through each of our locations and different services that we provide throughout the city. So we'll continue our communication with our partners and communicate that out with various communities, depending on what services and locations are needed for each community.
The current tenants were mentioned. Will this affect the timeline presented?
Again, we're still in the negotiation process at this time. We are not anticipating that this will impact our timeline, but we do not have our negotiations, we don't have it finalized, but we do not anticipate it impacting our timeline.
How long exactly will the kids be in the swing space?
Our construction project usually continues about a 2-year progress. So we will anticipate each modernization project to continue for 2 years, and the students will be utilizing the swing space in 2-year duration for each project.
Will Douglas MacArthur affect George George Mason, and a renovation of the swing space?
There's no relation between Douglas MacArthur project, the swing space project. Well, there is a relation between the swing space and George Mason project, but there's no relation between Douglas MacArthur and the other two projects.
Are we currently aware of what the aftercare options will be on site at the swing space?
And I think I touched that briefly in my previous question. At this time, we do not have that identified, and we'll continue that discussion with our partners and provide that information to our communities.
Now, I'm not certain if this is referring to the child care that is currently on site at 1703 or child care provided by ACPS, but the question is, will child care be moved during swing space renovation, which I believe we addressed in the presentation. Funding for the swing space is included in the CIP budget, correct?
The funding for swing space is included in our CIP, yes. And Sophie, if you want to add anything to it, go ahead.
Does this schedule indicate that George Mason students would return to permanent school or to their new school location, their new building in fall of 2026?
That is the most aggressive schedule that we have is showing the fall of 2026. Again, there's with the current market conditions, there's a lot of volatility with the market, with the labor availability, and et cetera. Also, the design for the swing space and the permitting process. We are still figuring that out and working through with our design team that will impact how long the design and permitting process will take and the construction of the project. And that will inform when we can start the swing space use for the project. So I think there is a couple of questions about, the 2-year duration of the swing space utilization, as well as showing on the timeline for 3 years. So we just wanted to clarify that these are anticipated timelines. And if there is any changes to the schedule, we'll communicate that out to everyone. So that's why it's showing as is currently.
Can you revisit the description of transportation that will be provided during the time the students are utilizing the swing space?
So the transportation will be provided to all the students. We'll be busing all our students due to the proximity of the location to obviously the students that we're serving. So we'll provide busing to our students to this location, to the swing space, just like how we're doing for Douglas MacArthur at this time.
Do you think we factored in supply chain delays in construction of George Mason? MacArthur construction seems to have taken longer than anticipated, and wondering if that was due to the supply chain delays.
We have for Douglas MacArthur project, due to the pandemic, it had a lot of different varying elements that impact the project and the supply chain issues, labor shortage, and et cetera. Currently, George Mason construction is a few years out, so we don't know what that market condition is going to look like, and that is why we do have some flexibility built into our schedule to start either and to have the swing space to complete either fall or in the winter of 2024. We do work with our contractor once we bring them on board. Through their pre-construction services, we closely work with them and come up with various different options to combat any material delays. We try to procure any long lead items and et cetera, and trying to come up with our design team with various different packages to combat those issues. So we'll address those once we get the contractor on board.
Following up on the aftercare question, is there a chance aftercare could be at a much closer location so that parents would not need to travel across the city to pick up their children? If aftercare is at the swing space, it's potentially inconvenient for parents and would mean busing would not be an aid in any way.
We'll definitely bring this request to our leadership and to our partners, and we'll follow up with the community. We do not have answer to this question at this time.
Will the community still be able to use the fields next to George Mason during construction?
The fields next to George Mason will not be available during construction. One of the pros for using the swing space, it enables us to do a construction on the whole site and not being restrained. So we would want to be able to utilize the whole site and be able to design the project to the most efficient possible way.
Could you share a little bit about the playground and outdoor space options for the swing space?
We're still working through that. We do not have any options to present at this time. We are in discussions with our design team, and once we have more information, we'll provide an update early next year on the design progress for the swing space.
Will the buses pick up at homes or at one central location? Do you have an estimate on how early students will be on the bus?
Again, at this time, we have a very high level information on the transportation. I do not have the details for the pickup times or locations at this time.
Have you considered adding liquidated damages for project schedule completion to the contract for the general contractor?
Yes, we do have a liquidated damages clause in all our contractors' contract language, so it's incorporated in all of our contractors.
Can you share the busing system that is set up for MacArthur students? It was said that it will be similar to George Mason.
Hey, Azuka, can you all hear me? I could take that one if you want.
Erica, your internet is not stable.
Can't hear me?
I think it's better now, yes.
Is it better if my camera is off?
Yes.
Okay, sorry about that. I wanted to jump in to help with that question. So at Douglas MacArthur, all students, no, it's not working.
I think it has started to work, Erica. Okay, I'm not sure if she's coming back as if you want to take a try at it.
Yeah. Erica, I think you were okay. Can you talk or?
So all students at Douglas MacArthur, can you hear me? Sorry about this, are provided transportation. Bus stops are assigned as we typically assign stops and are not one central location, but they're not at individual student homes. To try to make them convenient, we apply pretty much our walk policy for. The same would be the case for George Mason. Since you live in the George Mason zone, within walking distance to this swing space, all students would be provided transportation. At this, don't have an estimate of how long that bus ride may be, but that would be something we work with the transportation office on, making sure it's as efficient as possible. Hopefully you caught most of that.
We did, thank you. Okay, I believe that wraps up all our questions. Thank you all so much for sharing your questions in the Q&A. These will be used to potentially build frequently asked question sections on the 1703 part of the Capital Programs Planning and Design webpage. This presentation will be available for view and download, and the recorded portion of the meeting will be available in the coming weeks with captions. If you have any additional questions following this meeting that perhaps you did not think of immediately, you can feel free to send an email to myself, Artia Funderburk, Sophie Humer, or Azuka Bartlett. Let's see. I think we have one or two more. If we have time, Azuka, we can take those questions. Okay. Do we have an estimate on when supplies and materials will be moved from George Mason to the swing space?
That will be coordinated once we have a schedule for our construction start date. So we do not have an exact date for that.
There's a concern with adding an extra hour or more to students' mornings. Are there any closer options for a swing space?
At this time, we do not have any options for another location for swing space for our modernization projects.
Okay. That concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you all so much for joining and sharing your questions. We look forward to more feedback. As mentioned, we encourage you to please sign up for the CIP newsletter and check the Capital Programs Planning and Design webpage when you have time, as we are constantly updating information there. If you come across or think of any questions tonight that you forgot to ask, feel free to send them to me. You can also our contact information is also on the front of the CPPD website. Thank you all so much, and you all have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone.